Master said,
Om Sharanagata Buhu Bir Yo Na Labhyaha Shinvatopi Bahavo Yam Na Vidyuhu Ascharyo Gyata Kushulo Shalabdaha Ascharyo Vakta Kushulo Nushishtaha. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Few there are who have heard of the great self within. Many others, though they hear it, fail to comprehend it. Fortunate is the one who hears of it. Wonderful is the one who speaks of it. But extremely blessed is that one who, having heard of it from the lips of an illumined preceptor, is able to realize it here and now, in this very lifetime. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Dhanur Grihitva Upanishadam Mahastram Sharam Upasanishita Sanjayita Ayamya Tad Bhavakatena Chetasa Laksham Tadevaksharam Somya Vidhi. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Taking as bow that mighty weapon furnished by the Upanishads, fastened to it the arrow of mind, made sharpened by thoughts on reality alone. Then pulling full strength, O student, release and penetrate the mark, that imperishable Brahman. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Saviryam Karavo Vahai, Tejasvi navaditamastu ma vidvishovahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings, and may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. We welcome you all again on this second of 2 weekend classes. Yesterday we celebrated the thrice blessed day of Lord Buddha, and that great soul who came to earth to bring this consummate religion of non-violence, ahimsa, and spread it across the world, from India to Indian Hinduism, through Tibetan Buddhism, which we studied yesterday, through Dzogchen in China, on to Zen in Japan. It was all India on the move. And Buddhism did it best without lifting a sword. Just lifted feet of mendicants and sent them around the world to spread this beautiful message of Buddhism, which is just India in its essence. Vedanta and India one and the same, really, as Vivekananda used to declare. So we had a good class on that yesterday. We studied principles and so forth of the Vajrayana path. We didn't quite make it to Mahamudra teaching, but some of you went online and found that class on Mahamudra yesterday and told me that you had seen it, followed up. That's very good. Those are all available, some 50 classes there, and we're always adding more to them. In fact, you are on those in the background. You'll probably hear your own voice either laughing or clearing your throat, as the case may be. You're in there somewhere in that audience that has come, called a Sangha in our tradition. Sangha is a group of like-minded individuals that gather to hear the truth, as the chant I uttered just now, that people gather together to hear that teachings of Brahman. And they do it with minds made sharpened by thoughts of reality alone. Because if you do it with a restless mind, as we said yesterday, then you're not getting clear vision or clear returns from your meditation. I used to say our founder Lex Hixon loved 2 words more than any in terms of practice, and that is, the first word is clarification, and the second word is intensification. And those had to be in proper order. You can't intensify your spiritual practice with an unclear mind, then you have some unsavory effects that come about. So it's better to clarify the mind first, and both Buddhism and Hinduism call that khyati in Sanskrit. And if you do that clarification process first and then intensify your sadhana, you'll get the right effects. What Lord Buddha called right orientation, which is one of those facets of the Ashtangika Marga, the Eightfold Path. You, again, would learn the Four Noble Truths first, and the Fourth Noble Truth would lead you to the Eightfold Path. In much the same way, today, if you enter into yoga, don't just jump to hatha right away, as so many people have done, and gotten stuck there, I might add, but take up the 5 yamas and niyamas, because those are the first 2 limbs. The first principle that you would encounter would be ahimsa, non-violence in thought, word, and deed, to all creatures on all sides of the spectrum. What do I mean by all sides of the spectrum? The subhuman species, no violence towards plants, animals, insects. And if, as far as you can help, insects I'll give you. Swat a mosquito once in a while and then say Om, because they send it on to a better life. But anyway, on the other side of the spectrum, inwardly, you have your ancestors, you have your celestials, what we think of as angels in Christendom. And then you have deities, which Tibetan Buddhism was talking about yesterday, Harukas and Dakinis, male and female deities inside of you. Remember, this is all inside of you, it's not outside. And you contain it all. Your consciousness contains it all. It's just that your consciousness gets conditioned somewhat. Your mind's consciousness gets conditioned somewhat. But the consciousness of Atman or Buddha nature never gets conditioned. That's not needing intensification or clarity. See, that's always clear and always intense. You might have noticed if you came upon it in deep meditation. And then beyond the Devas and Devis, we call it, or the deities, there is the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, which we always sing to, which might be a good thing to start off the class together. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Deva Maheshwara, Gurur Eva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So Guru Brahma, used to think of Brahma, Lord Brahma, not Brahman. Brahman is the absolute reality without form. But Brahma, the Lord, used to be called the Creator, but we've did a one-upmanship on the English language there, and we say projector is a better way of saying that. Projects the universe through the great mind, because you can't create something out of nothing. Something was always there to begin with, which is a fact that science doesn't know about, for instance. We'll look at the 5 facts of Indian philosophy soon here this morning. And then there's Lord Vishnu, who preserves, you see, sustains, if you will, once it's projected. And then there's Lord Shiva that comes along and dissolves it all at the end of a cosmic principle. If you have a hard time thinking of these beings as forms, that's all right. Think of them as energies. The energy of projection, sustenance, and dissolution. And so I was telling someone yesterday when we were talking, everyone loves the projection and everyone likes to sustain it, but nobody likes to destroy it. So you have to equally make friends with Lord Shiva, or Mother Kali, if you will, because they're the power that comes along and dissolves it all. And when I say dissolves it, it's better to say that than destroys, because nothing can get destroyed. Everything is at all times. It's just a matter of whether it's in form or not. When it disappears from form, it just goes back to its source. The disappearance of objects is their return to their source. The death of beings is their return to their source, Sri Ram says in the Adhyatma Ramayana. So there is no birth and death in Indian thinking. See, it's just cycles. And then you think a little deeper and you think, maybe those cycles aren't so favorable either. I'm gradually being dragged from birth to death and death to birth in these cycles. Maybe I want off that wheel, what Lord Buddha called the Kala Chakra, or out of samsara, or what Hinduism calls Maya. Get off of Maya and be free. And try and do that even when you get back into form. Remain free. That's the big challenge, isn't it? And no nirvana to attain and no samsara to renounce, as Mahamudra teaching says. You see, there's just one continual, eternal, all-pervasive, homogeneous consciousness, and it, like an ocean without waves, it occasionally breaks into waves. And that's where the dynamism comes. That's where Divine Mother comes. And that's where the 3 gunas surface and all these principles that you've studied about in Vedanta. And that's where you have to become a master sailor or a master surfer. I wasn't a master surfer, but I had my share of very large waves when I was young in Hawaii, where we all go surfing. I lived on the North Shore right at the best spots, you see. So I was attracted out into the water. So you have to be very careful about tides and rip tides, and have to have points where you line up with, so you don't drift away and not know it. And have to be careful of the waves that are coming in outside and where you take off on the wave. There's a whole art to that. You see that It keeps you alive. I mean, in the same way, the spiritual aspirant needs to keep himself alive in this current of name and form in time and space, based on cause and effect. That's Maya. That's Swami Vivekananda's definition of Maya. Name, form, time, space, and causality. Those 5 things. 5 is important in this world because you have 5 senses and there are 5 elements. And there are 5 dream senses and 5 dream elements, and there's a 5-fold mind, and there are 5 eternal facts of philosophy, and I can go on forever about the 5s. There are so many of them. So, all of this to say that in the Upanishads, these great scriptures, we find these truths finally written down for us. For a long time they weren't written down, they were just uttered, memorized, transmitted to children to children like that, and to students. And so they remained very pure for a long time. I often liken that to a lava tube in Hawaii that comes down from Mauna Kea or Mauna Loa, which are the tallest mountains on Earth. If you measure them from the ocean bottom, they're almost twice as tall as Everest. So there's these huge things out there in the ocean you see, and liquid earth flows out of them, molten. And how does it reach the ocean, you see, and spread itself? It goes underground and it forms these lava tubes. My brother and I, Aloha Steve in Hungary, where he is right now, and his son Abhinaya, one of our students, we all used to go into the lava tubes at night, at midnight, and walk through them. Because if you turn off all light, then you're totally sense deprived there. There's no sound, there's no light, you can't see anything. And it's a very beautiful experience, sort of meditative experience, where you're under the earth like that and everything's so quiet. So we used to do these things in our youth, but the thing about a lava tube is that it keeps the lava hot and pure, so that it can make it to the ocean, so they can expand the island. So you're sitting on an island in the sea that's adding acres to itself each year. Don't call your travel agent yet, because it's not quite habitable. But nonetheless, your scriptures from India are like that, is what I'm saying. They've come from a long way back inside of you over a long period of time, and they've managed to remain pure up to this date. Many scriptures suffer interpolation, text torturing, Vivekananda called it. And so some of the non-dual wisdom gets left out of it or gets tarnished, apparently so. So you have to dig for it. You have to be like an ant and take the sand and take the sugar and leave the sand behind, as Ramakrishna used to say. But the Upanishads have remained remarkably clear, and now you can put them into different languages. Back in the 80s, I went to Japan, and Swami Siddharthananda and a few other of the Japanese devotees were right at that time putting some of these scriptures into Japanese language, and he was overseeing it. And so you see it spread all over into different languages, and it remains remarkably lucid. Talk about clarification, before intensification. And these messages come through very clear, like these chants I just started with. Some have never heard of the Great Self, some have heard but failed to comprehend, others hear. Sri Ramakrishna put that in contemporary language by saying, some have never heard of milk, some have heard of it but never tasted it, and some manage to get a glass of it and drink it and become enriched. Some own a dairy. That's my addition to the story. Some beings are rich in the wisdom of the Buddha and Krishna and others. They are treasurers of this, see. Or they make themselves that if they're not. So the ocean of Dharma is, as we were saying yesterday, is an ocean you'd like to sink your mind into. The ocean of samsara, try and retrieve the mind from that, because that's scattered mind, the fragmented mind, ill mind, dull mind, restless mind. There's different kinds of mind that are existing or abiding, unfortunately, in that ocean of samsara. Depression and, as we were talking about yesterday, distractions by brooding, all these things that are wastes of time. You should be abiding in peace of mind all the time. Holy Mother said, You need peace of mind first and foremost. So that would be a sattvic guna that you'd try to attain. You'd leave behind tamas and rajas, dullness and restlessness, and you'd attain this even-mindedness, which Krishna calls sthiti pragnasha in the Gita. And you'd try and abide there, just like a surfer would try to abide in a certain area so as not to get caught by riptides or outside breaks. And you would learn the art of that kind of balance, and then your spiritual experiences will come. People are always complaining, I'm not getting spiritual experiences from my meditation. I've been meditating 10 years, I've never seen God, you see. Well, John said, no man has seen God with these eyes. So you're probably still trying to look outwardly to see God, and that's not going to ever work. It's the kingdom of heavens are within you, so you must look inside for that. And you'll find along the way gods before you reach God. You'll find these principles, these great egos, these great personalities, and you'll have to deal with them. See, the best thing to deal with them is a mantra, you see, because they understand that coinage, you see. They don't take cheap dollars and francs and pounds in there, you see. The coinage in there is mantra, so if you approach a deity inside in your meditation and you have the right mantra, then you may pass, you see. Sort of like Gandalf, right? You may pass, you may not pass. So, I digress, but it's a good thing, you see. Digressing in Vedanta means you just go on another tract that's just into this ocean of Dharma, constantly dipping your mind in there, Sri Ramakrishna said, like it were a towel, and you just completely saturate it with it. It's not such a good method to try and resist evil, you see. That's why Christ said that, and to try and get rid of lust. You should transform it into lust for God realization. You know? So there's all these resistances that people are doing in their practice that, well, it's a phase, but basically there are much better ways to return to your true nature, because your true nature is always there, always has been there, always will be there, and you will need some intense practice, clarification, and intensity to realize that. It's a razor's edge path. See? Arise, awake, stop not till the goal is reached. Approach the wise teachers and learn from them. For sharp as a razor's edge is the spiritual path, and difficult to navigate. So say the wise. Swami Vivekananda used to love that saying out of the Upanishads. Utistata jagrata, he would yell it at you and wake you up in the morning at 4. So you'd come meditate, you see, at the retreat. So a razor's edge, it's very difficult to navigate, and it will be much easier to navigate if you'll just put your mind in the right place. That's what I'm saying. So we meet here 3 hours this morning again. 3 hours is really nothing. You see, we could go on all day doing this. We do that at retreats. We take 6 hours out of the day, plus 2 hours for meditation, plus an hour for worship. So we're trying to do all facets of spiritual life. The 4 yogas. We like to worship. We did that last night downstairs in a beautiful worship on Lord Buddha's birthday, at Buddha Purnima, full moon. See. And then we like to do the other 3 yogas too. We gather together and study the Dharma. We memorize some things, because if they memorize them, it becomes a part of your being, rather than just to go in one ear and out the other. That's happening a lot with even our secular education in the West. We think we have to memorize things, but then we forget them after the test. You see. But the tests of spiritual life are never ending. You're always on trial. You see. So you must always be on vigil. It's not getting a degree here. You're talking about enlightenment. So you're going to have to remember these things as you approach these deities inside, if that's the way you think of it, you see, or as you move inside after death. We didn't get to the chart on the Bardo states either. Tibetan Buddhists have studied the Bardo states for 1,300 years now. They're sort of the experts on what happens to the soul immediately after it leaves the body, and where it goes and how it returns. You see. These are bardos that we're not aware of. Bardo is like a period of time. It's also like a loka, or a realm. You see, a realm that's caught in time of some kind. If you transcend time, then no bardos, no realms, you see, so no birth, no death. So a lot of this is just rather a warm-up. It's not only sort of a review of yesterday, but it's a warm-up to the Upanishad that we've been studying for the last 3 or 4 visits. We took up one of the minor Upanishads. Now, Mukhya Upanishad, that's what's here underlined. Mukhya means chief. The chief and principal Upanishads are these ones that are underlined. See, you'll see them there: Brihadaranyaka, Chandogya, Mundako, Mandukya, Kato, Aitareya, Taittiriya. They're all there, underlined. There's about 10 of them, although I did underline the Svetashvatara because I'm of a personal opinion that Shankara did the commentary on that. He's so ancient, not that ancient for India, but 700 AD. So you're looking back and they're saying, well, maybe these scriptures were written by other people named Shankara, or maybe they were written by some of his students. When he went around India, he gathered all sorts of students to him, sort of like Christ and his 12 apostles. But the 12 apostles weren't the brightest bulbs in the chandelier, I must say, of the world's religions. Shankara's devotees were astute. Even his householder students were astute. I could sing you some songs of what they write and what they meditated on. It's profound and beautiful at the same time. So, I think John was a great disciple. He went into a cave. He did the yogic thing at the end of his life. Went into a cave, meditated. No man has seen God with these eyes. He realized God wasn't here and that Jesus was the closest thing you could see as far as God in form could be. He meditated on, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Things that he heard from his master and meditated with him in the Garden of Gethsemane. Much of this you have to infer from the Bible. It's not really said in the Bible, but so many days went by when they were together meditating. So a lot of things happened. They weren't just praying to some God somewhere, which Christianity got into later. There was meditation on these principles, because these aren't things to pray to, these are things to realize. Jesus wasn't a savior, he was an exemplar. My teacher used to say that a lot. In India, we follow them as examples, because he can't save you. You save yourself, and it's always been the case, and it always will be the case. Jesus is in you, not outside to come out and maybe be an example, but it's up to you to do the saving. In the case of the fallen and the lowly ones, as they say, yes, there'll be some sort of sacrifice there and some help, because they've lost their way. But for the most part, he wants you to realize that birds have nests and foxes have holes, but you have no place to lay your head here. That embodied life is bondage, and that freedom is beyond the body. You're trying to seek freedom in the body. That's a difficult proposition, you see. There's always going to be these limitations of the senses, 5 senses. They're delimited by nature. They are outward going by nature, says the Mundaka Upanishad, so you have to turn them off at times, or else you get attached to the objects. That's what yoga is all about. Patanjali came in 140 AD, probably around there, 700 years after Buddha, and he looked at people, even in India, and saw how they were attached to the objects. And he said, the seer has become attached to the seen. That's, in other words, Purusha, the soul, is now under this bondage of Prakriti, nature. The whole thing's been reversed, you see. Now, turn it back. You master nature. You transcend nature. You transcend the body, mind, ego mechanism and be yourself again. And these mechanisms are in you, and nature is your slave. Don't make it the other way. Become a slave to nature. So objects are, when you see through them with quantum physics or electron microscope, it should give you the cute clue that this is sand, shifting sand. Christ didn't need an electron microscope to see through the illusions of the world. He said, this is an impermanent place. This is constantly changing. This is transitory. This is ephemeral. This is illusory. Pick a word for it, and you can prove it. And science has too, but then you come away with a wrong conclusion that this world is your oyster or something, that birds have nests, foxes have holes, you have no place to lay your head here, and you're a Christian and you're not listening to that. So you must renounce, whether you're a monk or a householder, you must renounce this place and be yourself again. Would you? Oil and water don't mix, and in the same way, matter and spirit do not mix. Not a popular teaching, but I'm going to give it again. This is how we teach our children in SRV here. Our children sit them down, and they have to. Yes, it does mix, Babaji. See, I say watch for about 45 seconds. You see, and you just watch oil and water separate. They cannot mix. The fact that they mix for about 45 seconds means Maya. See, they appear to mix. And if you looked at that as a relationship that you had with nature, you'd be fine. But if you identify with that admixture, then you suffer. And all the problems of the world come out of that suffering. And they exacerbate. Pretty soon you have fragmented mind and all these diseases that you're throwing pills at now, you see. All the problems and the fake solutions come out of that process. But the real solution is one and one only. Realize the true self to be beyond nature. So that's what the Adhyatma Upanishad, those are two different scriptures, has been telling us for the past 21 slokas. And or actually the last 14 slokas. We arrived at 14 last visit here. And I was saying that this is just a sort of a roadmap for you if you're studying the 108 Upanishads. I put it up every time so that you know that there are 4 Vedas, and the 108 Upanishads are strewn throughout those 4 Vedas. And you're finding the I keep saying that, Adhyatma Upanishad there in the Shukla Yajurveda. See, it's one of those. And you notice it's not underlined because it's not one of the Mukhya Upanishads that Shankara commented on. It's one of the minor Upanishads. But when Vivekananda, we celebrated his 150th centenary, then we decided we'd start studying the minor ones as well as the major ones. We'd been through most of the major ones. The Brihadaranyaka and the Chandogya are so thick that we haven't gone through them. It would take us so many years. But we started taking up some of these minor ones, and we found some real jewels in them. I think Shankara in his 32-year life just didn't have enough time to comment on all of them. He took certain ones, and he's such a great light that they're considered the most authoritative. But there are these other Upanishads here that we've come to befriend. And since we meet for 2 to 4 times every 2 months or so, or sometimes 3 months, I'm leaving it up to you to connect the dots and do your study while I'm gone, and then I come back. So let's just read these first 12. I'll read these first 12 to you so that we kind of reorient ourselves to this Upanishad. False superimposition is the thought, I am the body, as well as the senses, and they are mine. So that's a false superimposition of the mind in ignorance, that these are you and that they belong to you. But these are other than the self, Atman. Through devotion to Brahman, the wise man should repudiate these. Knowing oneself to be the subject and witness of intellect and its operations, reject the idea of the self being other than the subject, identifying the I with that witness. So they took up body senses first, now they're taking up the intellect. You see how they're moving through the sheaths, the 5 sheaths, right? Rejecting conformity with the world, the body, and the shastras, that's the non-revealed scriptures, remove superimposition over the self. That is, your true self alone, instead of your small self. See, you must see that. The mind of the yogin perishes if he stays without intermission in the self alone. Through reasoning, revealed scripture, and experience, that he is the self of all beings. So that the mind of the yogi perishes is a good thing. You see, is what they're saying. You want to go beyond mind, intellect, senses, and body. These are not you. And you're mixing yourself up with them. They're aspects of nature. They're not spirit. There's only one thing that's spirit, and that's your Atman, or your Buddha nature, or Allah, or Almighty Father, or Yahweh, the Great Spirit, whatever you want to call it. That's your true nature. And it's not, nature comes out of it, you see, as waves come out of an ocean. But waves are made of water. See, they think themselves to be waves. And they come up and they say, I am the ocean, and everyone laughs at it, you see. But then they say, I am water, and then nobody laughs anymore. So these waves are coming out of the ocean of Brahman. That is, Maya is in Brahman like poison is in a snake. But the snake never dies. But you'll die if you're bitten by it. See? So you must keep that clear. Brahman isn't a form, but all forms can come out of the dynamic side of Brahman, like poison is in a snake. Poison is not all negative. You can use it for snake bite. The very snake that poisons you can be an antidote for something, you see. So you just have to clarify and intensify your thinking around that and get free of these false superimpositions. That Sanskrit word is vivarta, or adhyasa. They're two very good words in Sanskrit, but in English we cast about, how are we going to call that? Conditioning, false impressions, complexes. How about false superimposition? Because it's done by you and put over the truth is always being covered by you. So I see. Like when I went to the Catholic funeral the other day, you see, everyone was living in a whole other world, and crying over the body and so forth, you see. Some grief is there, so that's natural. But I looked at the body and said, my gosh, those are just wax figurines. There's no soul there anymore. Why am I even looking at them? See, these beings returned back into me, see, back into the Great Self. And their coming and going is a matter of 80 years, see, and then that's a moment in the flash of time. And they were never born and they never died, even though they appeared to be, because consciousness never gets born and never gets died. So all these lessons in Vedanta, if you go to a worldly scene like that, are just hitting your head and you're trying to keep a straight face. See? Trying to keep a straight face. Putting them in the ground with so much eklat and weeping over them and so forth. Why don't you go have darshan with them? They're waiting for you. See? You think they're with the body, you think you're the body, and you're just short-circuiting your connection with them, with eternal life, Jesus called it. You're short-circuiting it. Be strong, rise up above. See, be fearless, be bold. Know yourself. Know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. What are those statements? See, if not just encouragement to realize that which always is, always was, and always will be. See? I digressed again, sorry. 5. Without granting for a moment even a toehold for sleep, gossip, verbal exchanges, and self-forgetfulness, meditate on the self in the self. Casting the body far aside, which is the offspring of parental exudations, since its status is no better than that of an outcast, thus become Brahman and realize fulfillment. Dissolve the self in the Supreme Self, as the space in the pot gets dissolved in infinite space. Then, as the infinite, be silent forever, O sage. Having become the self-luminous substratum as being, reject both the macrocosm and the microcosm of becoming, which are but abodes of impurities. Locating the body-bound I-sense in the ever-blissful spiritual self, renounce the subtle body, eternally be the absolute Brahman. Knowing I am that Brahman, in which this world appearance exists, like a city reflected in a mirror, find fulfillment, O sinless one. Liberated from the grip of egoism, like the moon after an eclipse, full, ever blissful, self-luminous, one attains one's essence. The destruction of actions leads to that of thought. Thence results the dwindling of the innate impulses to act. The obliteration of innate impulses is liberation. It is held to be freedom in life. At all places and by all means perceive everything as spirit and achieve the dissolution of innate impulses, since doing so strengthens the attitude of universal goodwill. And then the sloka we ended with last visit. Never should one be heedless in devotion to Brahman. Heedlessness is death. So aver the philosophers of Brahman in regard to this science. How many of you have memorized those 14 verses so far? Anyone? Annapurna. How many have you memorized?
It's a bit of a struggle, but about 35.
Very good, very good. So make these a part of your consciousness by memorizing them. And you don't need to go to books. And when you meditate, it can fuel your meditations. People are sitting in zazen and this and that for hours and hours a day meditating on emptiness or nothingness. Well, meditate on something if it's not working. Take up the cosmic principles. Sankhya, Yoga, Vedanta, Shaivism, Jainism. They all want you to take up stations for meditation. Forget about the formless Brahman. You'll never realize that in meditation until Divine Mother decrees you will. When you're ready. In the meantime, know the stairs between the lowest step and the top step. You can't jump from the lowest step to the top step, and everything in between is just a mystery. Find the stations that you move in. It's called involution, and we've lost it, like breadcrumbs, trail of breadcrumbs that's been pecked by birds. We've lost it over the eons because of dualistic and fundamentalist thinking, see, and forgetfulness, as he just said here so nicely. Without granting for a moment, even a toehold for sleep, gossip, verbal exchanges, and self-forgetfulness. Meditate on the self, see. So you're going to have to remember that these steps are there and take account of them. First 5 would be earth, air, fire, water, and ether. Scientists is looking out to them and then thinking that there's some mystery in their particles. But just to know that they are made of particles is the answer to the mystery. Because that's the first gateway to yoga. To know that particles, everything is made of particles and vibration. But the yogi doesn't go outward with that knowledge. It turns inward and begins to inspect their origins. Not in the physical universe, that's the appearance of origin. In unmanifested nature, from seed form, everything came out in 5s. 5 senses, 5 elements, 5-fold mind, and so forth. So you must take each of those up and account for them. That is, earth will connect to smell. Water will connect to fire, will connect to air, will connect to touch, and ether will connect to hearing. Yes. So you connect the 5 senses with the 5 elements because that's the way consciousness marched out through them. And science is unfair, see, because it's not giving us an involution. It's all Big Bang, some sort of creation, then a march through 4,320,000,000 years, and then some sort of a void at the end. But I say you should avoid the void. You should turn back in, and consciousness is, all of this has been under the operation of consciousness, you see. And so it must turn back in and give these up as it took them on. Tibetan Buddhist man, Rinpoche, is sitting there, you see, reading to his disciple who just passed, and he's appealing to his subtle senses inside. He doesn't have gross senses anymore. He's in a dreamland, as it were. He says, now go toward the Buddha light, you see. Oh, you're feeling dryness of mouth? That's because you're detaching from water. Oh, your eyes are burning? That's because you're detaching from fire. You have this relationship with matter that has become a binding, you see, and you can't let it go. Even your most intelligent people are bound with a death grasp to the atomic particle. But you don't know about the intelligent particle yet that moves inward. See? That's your own intelligence. If it's outward going, then it's going to end in billions of subatomic particles that are changing at a billionth of a second. with no foundation whatsoever. But what does he say here? The substratum, you see. Having become the self-luminous substratum as being, not becoming, reject both the macrocosm and the microcosm. Well, here's the macrocosm. Reject that by moving in, you see, and then you find the microcosm inside of you, you see. And that's going to be all these subtler principles. So it's like looking in a tidal pool. See? I used to do that when I was young, see, along the Oregon coast. Just see so many things in a tidal pool. But that was, the microcosm of the macrocosm in physical space. But in spiritual life, it's the opposite way around. The microcosm is subtle inside. The macrocosm is out here. See? So you have to go to the subtler, from the gross to the subtle, and from the subtle to the causal. The causal is going to be a big jump because your ego dies there. In deep sleep, for instance, no ego, right? Dreaming, you have ego still, but in deep sleep, no ego. So you have to man it. You have to keep your third eye open as you move inside to this formless realm, because that's hand in glove with Brahman, deep sleep. See, that's why you feel so healed when you're in deep sleep, and you come out of it so resuscitated from the vagaries and vicissitudes of life. So we stopped at 14. Never should one be heedless in devotion to Brahman. So, this is a chart out of the tradition, probably Buddhism, but very, very, very possibly it's got mentioned in other traditions as well. It's a teaching called the 10 Major Knots in the Rope of Human Bondage. The live streaming audience is seeing that come up on their screen right now. And like I say, even in the Vedic darshanas it's mentioned, there are 10 knots in the rope of human bondage. The illusion of personality, one, that's ego, doubt, belief in the efficacy of religious rites and rituals, sensuality, ill will, desire for a future life in the world of form, desire for a future life in the world of the formless, pride, lack of mental quietude, and ignorance. So it's a different list than the 6 passions and the 8 fetters that you usually hear in this conjunction. You've got some other more profound things to think about in there, like desire for life and form. I mean, people probably even aren't thinking that way. They think life is good and maybe there's only one of them, so I should make the best of it. So a very stunted picture of this reincarnation that India has always been thinking about, that you take on bodies and give them up like children outgrow clothes and pass on into other sets. So the body just comes and goes. You take it, you drop it. You don't get attached to it until such a time when your desire for rebirth is over and you can then merge yourself in the formless, like a hailstone falling in an ocean, Shukla says. So in that way, there's a great facility in this transmigrating soul. You just have to make sure that you realize that there's a soul that doesn't transmigrate, and that's what he's saying here. Give up being and give up becoming and become being is actually what he's saying. You are the underlying substratum to all this as consciousness with a capital C. See? And it becomes consciousness with a lowercase c when you take on the 5 sheaths: ego, intellect, mind, energy, called prana, by the way, and body. These 5 sheaths cover the Atman. So we go back to the first sloka. False superimposition is the thought that I am the body and the senses and they are mine. So that was wrong thinking, wrong orientation. Who taught you that? Or better yet, who didn't teach you that you were the Atman? Because then you wouldn't have had to give them up later, 100,000 lifetimes later, after suffering so many things. And after running yourself ragged in these worlds of name and form, thinking that money and a graduate degree and other things are the goal of life. There is no meaning to life. It's all in Maya. There is no attainment here, and there's no losing here. See, it's just dream. Row your boat in it, but it's a dream. And there are other ways to put it. Like I said, it's an illusion, it's ephemeral, it's transitory, it's mutable. The point is to return to that one station which is immutable, which is you. I am that, or that thou art. Tattvamasi, or aham brahmasmi, or aimatma brahma. I and my Father are one. Anywhere you go, you'll find out that that's been the assertion of the most experienced spiritual masters that the world has ever seen. And then you must take them as the example and follow them. Grant unto Caesar what is Caesar's, take unto yourself what is the Lord's. It's that simple. It's a law written in spiritual stone, in the bedrock, in ruins, in the bedrock of the soul. Islam, most the Sufis say, that truth is written in letters of molten gold across the mind, consciousness of the mind. It's like you go inside, you'll see those 99 names of Allah, and they'll each one tell you how Allah is the only reality. See? Everything else is just a reflection or an expression, if you want to be kind to it. Oh, it's an expression, you see. Humanity is just an expression, cut in the image, but you've never seen God with these eyes here. You've just seen emanations, expressions, reflections, and so forth. Finally, he's saying that is apantaratmas. Apantaratmas is the rishi of this Upanishad. Very little known about him, almost nothing, but one of these ancient rishis who birthed these Upanishads through his own spiritual experience and passed them on to his family in great lines, solar lines. Like I was saying yesterday, my teacher used to say, here in the West they're trying to convince me that in order to see my relatives I have to go to the zoo. But he's not buying that at all, because there's an involution, and he's followed that involution, and he doesn't go with matter and back to the Big Bang with matter. So he doesn't go in and out of the physical universe. He comes into the physical universe from a solar line, and then he departs that like Buddha did, getting out of the web of time, and goes back inside his consciousness, which pre-exists matter. Mundaka Upanishad says, anterior to life and mind is the Atman, yourself. You birthed all this. See? Like the hippies back in the 60s saying, we are stardust, we are stardust. That's nonsense. You're not stardust. You're that great soul who gave birth to 1 billion suns with your own thought. You are that eternal Atman, immortal. All praise be to myself. See, I am the deity of my own worship. These are quotes I'm drawing from the Tantras and the Upanishads that have appealed to me, you see. And I prefer to think of myself as a spiritual entity, not a piece of matter. Don't you? Isn't that why you're sitting here? Don't you feel that science is unfair in its conclusion, that everything will just go to a void and become a nihilist? But you should annihilate nihilism and avoid the void. Because you're a spiritual entity, and you always were and always will be, and that precedes or is anterior to everything that happened in the field of action. That is, thought is father to the deed, and thought and deed are father to the object. If you turn the mind off, there's none of that anymore, because the mind started all that mess. That's why you have to go back to Lord Brahma, the cosmic mind, and say, very beautiful what you did here. You should probably send some people to clean up the world. But the rest of the worlds are pretty good. But you know what? I want out of all of them. Take them back. I realize they're just mental projection. They're false. They're playgrounds, or suffering grounds, as the case may be. Take them all back. And these thoughts are not mine. I'm echoing the Upanishads. One Upanishad, the seer looks up in the sky, is about to pass away, and he says, "O Lord, take away the sun, that light of the sun, because that light is veiling your true light." Now he's about to give up all outward suns, all billion of them, you see, and go to himself, who was the author of those billion suns, I and my Father are one author, see. So he's returning to the source. And that's involution. See, there has to be an involution if there's an evolution. Be fair. So this self or Atman or Buddha nature or Busho and Zen, whatever you want to call it, is the original substratum of all of that. You see, so when we look at a chart like this, we see how we've gotten off of that trajectory, that tried and true path. You see, well-trodden path in and out of ourselves. Somebody's pecked at our little breadcrumbs, and we can't connect the earth, to the second world, subtle worlds, and the subtle worlds to the causal world, and we can't connect our gross body to our subtle body, which is our mind, and our mind to our formless body, and that to the Purusha, see, and the Purusha to the self, to the great self. So those are all acts that we have to visualize in meditation now. You see, it's a matter of upasana or vipassana, however you approach it, but you're going to have to make these connections or reconnect if they've been shorted out. See? Just like the wiring in this house. Sometimes you have to get it there with some steel wool and sandpaper and get rid of the corrosion, and then the thing lights up. You see, it's all lit up, and it'll work fine for you. So this chart then, we find out from this first opening chant that things like desire for a future life in the world of form is dragging us back from birth to death and death to birth. That's actually, in current times, Patanjali is fairly current, in India, that is, that's the clinging to life, it's called, or fear of death. It's the fifth of five again. It's the fifth of all of these great barriers to spiritual life. And it's the fifth and lowest hell, according to the father of Vedanta, Vedavyas. So yoga and Vedanta get together there and declare that. So it's called abhinivesha in Sanskrit, and it's one of these lowest hells that people can fall in. That is, thinking that they were born in the first place. You know how Shankara has put that, because we often say it. Namrichor na shanka, name jati beda, pita naiva me naiva, mata majanmaha. And he ends, Chidananda Rupaha, Shivoham, Shivoham. Namrichor Nashanka, Name Jati Beda. I have no death because I was never born. Shankara returned and sang this to his mother after he went away. Namrichor Nashanka Nami Jati Beda. And sorry, mother, Mata Pita no Janmaha. I have no birth, so I have no father and mother either. It's like Jesus saying, your children are not your own. See? You're just there to help guide them. They're souls on their own. They have their own karma. You have your own karma. Somehow you came together like pieces of wood bumping together down a river. See? As Ram says in the Ramayana. So it's not that I can be killed or that I have a death because I was never born to begin with. It's the body that gets born, and the senses get born, and so forth. The ego takes a birth, if you will, even though you could disprove that non-dually. But basically, this soul is unborn. Acreate was the word Vivekananda used when he came to the West. Brahman's Atman is acreate. That is, it has nothing to do with creation whatsoever. Creation happens, see, as a matter of the poison of the snake. Mental projection. That's why the mind has to be controlled, so it won't do that anymore. See? Do you really want to enter into form? Is it such a fun thing to do? See? Did you have fun there? Or did you get fulfilled? If you did, is that fulfillment an illusion, and there's a greater fulfillment beyond that? People go to death, like my grandmother, who said, "Oh, I made my peace with the Lord." She screamed out at the time of death. See, was not seeing God, whatever she was seeing. The seers go to birth to death in peace. That is, this assumed birth and death. See, they'll keep their peace of mind under all conditions. Equanimity is their watchword. See, and nothing can disturb them. Krishna says in the Gita, "Be content with anything, Arjuna. Thou art the Atman. Be content with anything. The world can blow up. You'll watch it. You've seen your deaths many times. You've seen yourself be born many times. Who is that that's watching? How do we know there's a void if somebody didn't go into the void and see it, come back and give it a name?" You have to say that to the nihilist, right? How do we know there's a void? Unless someone saw it, right? And gave it a name. Is it just a matter of imagination? Well, then what is that imagination, and who does it belong to? And as I was saying, this is origins. You trace things by their origins in this tradition. But don't try and chase to understand the origin of the son of a barren woman. See? Right? Somebody comes up to you and says, "I'm the son of a barren woman," and throws you a curve. You see, wait a minute, let me think about this, right? Doesn't make sense. Maya is like a son of a barren woman. It's like a fog bank. You want to withdraw from it and look at it from a distance, and then you'll know its secrets, you see. But if you're in it, you're imagining all sorts of horrors. Bears and spooks and ghosts. And can't see your way through to anything. So Ramakrishna said, never study Maya, like science is doing it. Withdraw from it and look at it from a witness standpoint. Then you'll know how it acts and how it works. And you can be done with it. Get caught in it, and then how is that possible? So the first sloka there, I'm commenting on the desire for a future life. But even more stultifying is there's desire for a future life in the formless worlds. See? So there must be a formless body too. It's called the causal body, or karana sharira in Sanskrit. Your sukshma sharira is your mind body, that's the subtle body, and then your stula sharira is the gross body. But you have this causal body too. It might be kind of easy to make the step from gross to subtle. You see, I have a mind, it thinks, it dreams. That might, sometimes different from the senses and the body even. But to jump to the causal body, well, I can tell you, I've not found anything, maybe 4 or 5 mentions of it in the scriptures. They just call it deep sleep, swapna. And they say all the seeds to everything are there. So seeds are very subtle. You'd have to connect that to, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's the main seed, you see, the Word. And out of that comes all other words and thoughts and worlds and spilling out. See. So you need to follow it back in. Now, what he means here by the 10 major knots in the rope of human bondage is nicely exemplified by this image of the gods and the goddesses. The gods and the asuras, that is, suras and asuras. These are some of these beings inside of us that went to the teacher Prajapati, and Prajapati, they said, we want to turn the ocean of milk, you see. So if you turn the ocean of milk, you get all these things. So they got Mount Mandara and then Vasuki, the snake, and they wrapped it around Mount Mandara and they started pulling back and forth. So here's where the gods and the asuras actually work together a little bit. What's the effect of that? Greed, jealousy. It didn't last long, you see, because all these good things started coming out of Ekarnava, the ocean of milk. It's the ocean of existence. It's the ocean of mental consciousness, you might say, that projects. So when they did this stirring process, then all of these great things, and they started grabbing them for themselves, you see. So the rope of human bondage there, Basuki, is called the gross kinds, and the gross knots, the subtle knots, you see, are there. And Mandara is actually the mind. And Maya, Vyasti and Samasti is individual and collective mind. When we study mind, it helps us to know that that's also three parts. Our individual mind, the collective mind, which is, 8 billion people now, or some, I want to forget the population of the world right now, but also all your ancestors are part of the collective mind. They're still involved. Vivekananda said, our ancestors haven't gone anywhere. They're still right here on this world, only in a different dimension. So your ancestors are part of the collective mind. And you might as well throw in the celestials and the gods and goddesses, the suras and the asuras. Collective mind is a vast, vast plane of consciousness with many subdivisions. They're called bardos in Tibetan Buddhism. They're called akashas in early Sanskrit. They're called lokas by Hinduism. We don't have a word for it. The closest thing we can get out of the Greek and Aramaic is the kingdoms of heaven are within you. And nobody took that literally, see, to go looking for them. They started looking up, see. But God isn't a fellow floating on a cloud with a big beard. See, read my chart. It's good to see Swami Vivekananda's take on this, which says, quote, sober-minded beings have become disgusted with their superstitious religions and are looking to India for new light. How eagerly they take in any little bit of the grand thoughts of the Vedas and Upanishads, which resist and are unharmed by the terrible onslaughts of modern science. The theories of creation out of nothing, a created soul, of a big tyrant of a god sitting on a throne in a place called heaven, and of eternal hellfires have disgusted the educated. And the noble thoughts of the Vedas about the eternity of creation and of the soul, they are imbibing fast in one shape or another. So that's written by a realized seer who has, like Dalai Lama, 14 times moved inside and come out to the earth, taken 14 incarnations as Dalai Lama. See, so there's these souls that know these inner tattvas or principles like the back of their hand, and they follow this amber stairs of birth and death, as Aurobindo called it, in and out, when they give up the body or take on another one. It's very masterful of them. The Tibetans say you're going to have to live one conscious death before you can have that one conscious life in order to do this. So you'll steep your mind in the Dharma, and at the time of death you'll give up fear, and you'll take your opportunity, and you'll open your third eye before you pass from the body. So you'll see. You'll see him or her, see, if you meditated on them for all those years. That's the promise of Sri Ramakrishna, that at the time of passing he will come to you and lead you. If you can't do it yourself, he'd rather have you do it yourself. So practice it. How? Meditation. See, you dissolve the mind stream in meditation every day until you know that terrain, at least intellectually, like the back of your hand. Then when it starts to happen to you actually, you won't be caught off guard. Being caught off guard means at the time of death you go unconscious. You panic. Now that's why the Tibetan Rinpoches there saying, oh, don't panic. You'll soon be free of the body. Your eyes are burning. Just let go of fire. Your mouth is dry. Just let go of water. He guides you through it, so that, because back to surfing, I know if you get hit by a big wave and you're under for a minute, you want to panic. If you panic, you die. You just say, I'm in the womb of the mother being churned around here. See, tumbled in a 20-foot wave. I'll come up soon. See, you don't panic. That's the last thing you want to do. So you practice this fearlessness against death while you're living, and you practice meditation to open these kingdoms of heaven, these doorways of yoga, inwardly. So quotes like that will give you some encouragement. You'll see that other beings have done it, and that there are certain routes which you're going to want to, as this Upanishad says, abandon, reject. Now, looking at the actual image there, we see then that those suras and asuras are involved in the gross and subtle knots. See, the gross knots are on the asuric side. Over there is hatred, doubt, pride, restlessness, and sensuality. That's its own Vedic list. Like I said before, lust, anger, greed, envy, jealousy, pride, delusion, pride of caste, pride of lineage. Those are all the six passions and the 8 fetters. But early Vedic lore has it that this was the short list. Things that to watch out for and to destroy inside of you. See, Shiva's the destroyer, right? So take him and have him destroy them for you. See, my teacher told me, make doubt doubt itself, make fear afraid of itself, and put death in its own grave. He told me once. So that's what you have to do with this power that's in you. You're invested with this power. You are the divine yourself. Now connect to that and bring out that power. It's called Shakti in our tradition. Maya is right at the very hub of that in mind. Mind and Maya are in cahoots. And the mind is, of course, divided into Vyasti, Samasti, and Vyapi, basically gross, subtle, and causal. There you see Vyapi at the top, you see, and with the word. So sort of at the edifice of all that is the word. There are two channels here in this chakra, one going out and one going in. This is 1,000-petaled here, if you're talking about Kundalini Yoga system. And so, souls come out, as it were, towards the gross universe, and then they move back in to the subtle universes and beyond. So that third eye has a very good view of everything that's going on. That's a womb with a view. Mm-hmm. Other wombs don't have a view. See, they're very, very dark. So you want to reach that chakra and open it. If thine eye be single, you shall know the truth. Open the Jnana Chakshu, Arjuna. Here, if you can't do it, I'll do it. And he touched him. So both Christ and Jesus, both Krishna and Jesus said to their disciples the same thing about the third eye. That's Agya Chakra. See, it's basically beyond wisdom. It's beyond Dharma. It's something more of a direct experience. But you set it up by knowing this wisdom. What's in a word? Oh, you don't know the half of it. People tell me that. I say, go read a scripture, Start taking apart a word like you take apart an atomic particle. Because you'll find in words have particles, and those particles are filled with mother power. She's the goddess of the word, by the way. Vak Devi, because we often sing to her as that. Vani Saraswati Vak Devi Bhagavati Parvati Mampahi Veena Pani Hamsavahini Vedanta Rupini Valayamam Vani Saraswati Vak Devi Bhagavati Parvati Mampahi. Veena Pani, she holds the Veena, so she's the mother of arts, music, and sciences. Veena Pani Hamsavahini, she rides on the swan. The white swan is her mount. White swan Hamsa means like Paramahamsa, pure soul. The peacock is behind her, that's the glitter of the world. But the Hamsa is underneath her, see. It's her very mount. So, Veena Pani Hamsavahini Vedanta Rupini, she's the holder, the very form, Rupa, of the Vedanta. All these words and teachings are in her. Palayamam, I take refuge in you. So, Vani Saraswati Vak Devi, Vak the word, she's the mother of the word. So what's in a word? You have yet to find out, intellectual Westerner. Now, to finish up this chart, before our first half closes, I did the homework for you here myself. And as far as hatred, doubt, pride, restlessness, and sensuality, they're pretty self-evident. We've seen them. We try and keep them at a minimum. They're impossible to get rid of in people who have an ego mechanism still operating and are in a body. But we try and keep them at a minimum. That's the teaching. So I thought, well, let's take hatred, doubt, pride, and so forth, and look at them in the fivefold mind. See? Or fourfold mind in this case. So your mind is made of intelligence, thought, that's buddhi and chitta, and ego, ahankara, is the mind, and manas, duality. It's dual by nature. It's why you want to open this eye and make thine eye single, because two eyes, divided mind, two ears, and so forth, is our senses going out. You see, the mind has become a petty potentate, and it's listening to the dual senses, and the intellect's getting thereby misinformed, and the ego's getting bloated. See, and the thoughts are running wild, right? Like a drunken monkey in a banana tree being stung by bees, right? That's the restless mind. So you want to solve that, then you want to look at these aspects that are plaguing you. Say like hatred. I have a problem with hatred. Don't quote me on that, because I'm not talking about me. So buddhi, hatred in the buddhi is negative attitude towards learning. See, it's going to be antagonistic to everything. Just look how Deepak Chopra is trying to talk to the scientists. And the minute he starts talking about anything metaphysical, they hate it. See, they're antagonistic to anything that isn't proved by the senses. But thousands of souls have come and have been saying again and again, I've shown you what it takes to reach the highest high. But you laugh and say nothing's that simple. You've been shown many times before. Messiah has pointed to the door, but no one's had the guts to leave the temple. It really probably applies pretty much more to rites and rituals. I mean, if you can leave the realm of the scientist and intellect and you get caught in religion, that's just a deeper, darker hell. Science is more of a friend to us, to Vedanta today, than religion is. See? Because science is at least being observant. You see, the religion is becoming not only just fundamentalist, but evil-minded. You see, greedy and so forth. Well, either way you look at it, hatred, doubt, pride, restlessness, and sensuality are going to be a part of these lower and higher mind. See, so what you want to do is this gain this transcendent view, this witness consciousness, this observer, like science is beginning to do that. You see, so in the buddhi and the intellect, negative attitude, ahankara, it's jealousy of the knowledge of others. So competition. Religion and philosophy in India were never sundered from one another. They checked one another. Religion got too sentimental, then philosophy came along and checked it, you see. If philosophy got too dry, then religion came along and watered it a little bit, you see, with the heart. But here, religion and philosophy are completely divorced from one another, and religion is being used for superstition, and philosophy is being used for debate and money-making. It's not, philosophy should state the truth to you. So non-dual philosophy is very prized in India, in all its scriptures. Advaita Vedanta, they call it. It's very prized. It's rare. I used to say about it, it's the most enigmatic piece of information you'll ever receive with your mind. You may see it one day and be very clear about it and get a very good vision of it, and then the next day wake up and say, what was that again? See? That's why they call truth simple. It's just simply profound. In the chitta, in the thoughts, hatred is violent, aggressive thought. In the mind, it's dislike of harmony and unity. Swarupa pratista, Sarupanyata bhava, Tantra says. There are people who are running away from their true self. Sarupanyata bhava. But Swarupa Pratishta means they're trying to establish themselves in their true self. So Tantra has those two observances. Tantra also says Tarkika Buddhi. Tarkika Buddhi means argumentative Buddhi, and you want to get rid of that, the debating kind of Buddhi. The teacher tells you something and you have faith in the teacher, you have to accept it and then practice it. Otherwise you won't make any headway. Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhanaktu, Sahaviryam Kar. We just chanted that to begin the class. May we both learn together. May we not be in disagreement. May we not find fault with each other. Let's just declare this an experiment in the West. See, gurus aren't very popular, so let's create a few of our own, like Lex Hickson, you see, a founder of our organization, and then follow and see where it leads us. How deep can we go? See, have faith. It's certainly better than arguing forever and getting nowhere. Use your discrimination, but that's different than argumentation. Let's agree to disagree, my teacher used to say, if it comes to that. Now how about doubt? Doubt in the intellect is uncertainty about valid knowledge. You can't make up your mind whether that's true or not, so you kind of are on the fence, as they say. Can't decide on something and proceed. Getting off the fence on either side is better than indeterminacy. Indeterminacy leaves you in this realm of doubt. And so what you want to do is make a move. So decide one way. If it's wrong, you'll know right away. And then you can go back and jump on the other side of the fence, you see. But it's much better than doubt. Doubt dies very hard. See. The curtain of nescience that comes down in deep sleep, which disallows the viewing of the seeds where you come from, is consisting of doubt, ignorance, and fear. Thank you. Fear, doubt, and ignorance. And it's thickened by brooding on fear, doubt, and ignorance. You think about those instead of their opposite. In Vedanta, you water the flowers, not the weeds. But in worldliness, you water the weeds and they'll never discover the flowers, never grow any. So doubt is a very difficult one to deal with. In the ego, it's feelings of insecurity and lack of self-worth. In the thoughts, it's uncertainty mixed with turbulent thought. In the mind, the dual mind, it's haphazard brooding and lack of direction. This is how doubt manifests in the antaha karana. You know that word in Sanskrit? It's the fourfold mind complex. Antaha means inner, so it's your inner body. Karana means cause. So the mind is the cause of everything out here, not nature. Nature couldn't do it alone. Mind got into the mix with Maya, like here. And that's what you see here, a mixture of mind, Maya, and nature. Thought is father to the deed again. And somebody wise in the West even said that. Now, one more before we'll take our break, and we'll do these after. Pride, darpa. That is where you see the Sanskrit words for hatred. Vesha and doubt, samshaya. In pride, it's darpa. In the intellect, sense of superiority and pride of knowledge. Ahankara, that's in the ego. Pride is opinionated behavior and lack of respect. In the thoughts, pride is judgmental thoughts and insensitivity. And in the dual mind, pride causes overweening attitude and delusions of grandeur. You're a legend in your own mind, but nowhere else. So here we have our break time. Is it about 5 more minutes? Let's take restlessness then. Vikshepa. Vikshepa is actually one of the 9 antaryayas in yoga. It's also one of the 5 states of mind. First state of mind, fragmented, sick. Is the second, dull. Third, sometimes dull, sometimes active. That's Vikshepa. And then ekagra is one-pointed mind. It's always balanced. And nirodha is no mind. It's a go beyond mind. So it's a beautiful teaching by the father of yoga that you have these 5 states of mind that you must master. See? But vikshepa in yoga then would be this sometimes on, sometimes off, sometimes balanced, sometimes imbalanced. You can't, center. Sri Ramakrishna called it the bee that lights, the fly. The fly that lights on honey sometimes and some very unclean things other times. You see? Why does it do that? It doesn't have any discrimination. You see? So it needs to graduate to that one-pointed state of mind, get itself free of doubt and hatred and so forth. So that's restlessness, vikshepa, like rajas. In the intellect, it's dissatisfaction with what is studied and known. That's an unfortunate condition, that you can't decide that this knowledge is true and then accept it and go on. You always have doubts about it, samshaya, and you always have this restlessness around it. You have to satisfy that, settle it. In the ego, restlessness is the desire to enjoy more and more experiences instead of being satisfied with those that are your due, as it were. In the thoughts, chitta, restlessness is thoughts that continually roam among sense objects. Like the chant I started at the beginning of the class, is that fasten your mind to the bow of the Upanishads after it's been made steady with thoughts of reality alone. So you can't do that because your thoughts are wandering. In Vedanta, one of the great jewels is called Samadhana. Samadhana is a mind that can concentrate on Brahman without any distractions. See? Have you tried that lately? Have you tried just concentrating on anything without distractions? The distraction becomes a distraction. See? And that's scattered mind. So thoughts that continually move among the sense objects has to be calmed down. And then restlessness in the manas, that is in the dual mind, lack of peace and contentment. Let's say if you made a little ladder, you'd start out with happiness, you see, after unhappiness and malcontent and all that. And from happiness you would go to contentment, and from contentment you'd go to peace. And from peace you'd go to the peace that passeth all understanding. It's a beautiful teaching by Jesus. That's, of course, beyond mind. But the mind must become peaceful first in order to avail itself of that. So it didn't take us 45 seconds to clarify all of this. Now just intensify it, now that you know the difference between the soul and matter. So here let's take our break and come back in some 15 minutes. While we're gone, live streaming audience can look at this on their screens up close. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you. For the remaining hour of our class, that is, this would be the 6th hour of our 5 hours we've spent in the Dharma this weekend, 3 on Buddhism and then 3 on this Adhyatma Upanishad. The Adhyatma, the original self, the original soul, and Upanishad, hard to define that word. Upanishad, sometimes they say the guru, who, when you come close to him, destroys the knots in your mind. So it's very actually appropriate for this chart. And this 14th sloka, which we're just taking up in it, never should one be heedless in devotion to Brahman. Heedlessness is death. So we have made our way through the description of 4 of these 6 knots. Let's take up sensuality. Vishaya Vati. Sensuality in the intellect is misguided intelligence that is tainted and banal. So if you look back on each of the classifications of the buddhi under each one of these passions or fetters, you'll get a good idea of, say, for instance, the buddhi is negative towards learning, it's uncertain about valid knowledge, it's got a sense of superiority, pride of knowledge, and it's always dissatisfied with what is studied and known. And now we find out that it's often misguided and tainted by gross preoccupation. See, so you just read the buddhi right on down, you read the list of its negative traits or qualities. If it's not lit up by the Atman, so sometimes the moon shines by borrowed light, the moon means the intellect, and the sun means the Atman. The sun has its own light, it doesn't borrow from anywhere. But this intellect needs that kind of guidance. It gets some of its light from the Atman, but it becomes affected by these other influences. And they become so bad as to become knots in human bondage that persist lifetime to lifetime, over many lifetimes. So you see, even in our own European society, if we take it from Christ onwards, all these 2,000 years BC, present era, then you have an intellect that's developed over many lifetimes, and you have one that maybe is a scientist or a doctor or a psychologist or so forth, and if this intellect repeatedly is not getting its light from the Atman, or is only getting a very faded or tainted light from the Atman, then you'll find out that it doesn't have that these negative qualities begin to develop in it to one degree or another in certain cases. For instance, if you have a intellectual who's humble, then it's a very nice person to talk to. But if they have pride of knowledge and think they know everything and they're superior and all that, then you don't want to be around them, you see. So to one degree or another, these passions and fetters, we often call them, or vikshepas or antaryaya, there's that word again, vikshepa, can mean anything from distortion of the intellect to restlessness to covering power of Maya. Remember how Shankara equates it with rajas, restlessness. Calls it the covering power of Maya. Avarani is, the distorting power of Maya. Avarana would be the covering power, outright covering, and Vikshepa would be the distorting power, or rajagunas. And then Sattva would be like Prakasha Shakti, would be revelatory. So that's how a chart like this could confer upon us knowledge of the buddhi, either being lit up by the Atman or not. Now, as far as the ahankara, because we're looking at the fourfold mind here, its elements, thoughts, ego, dual mind, and ego, are all in the mind. I remember when I was a teenager, and I first heard this teaching on the mind and heard it called the inner cause of things. Those were 2 very good realizations and insights for me. But then I saw how it was compartmentalized, and then I would escape that kind of indeterminacy that's listed here, doubt. Because you never know. You hear people talking all the time about their mind. They don't know where to go with it, and what compartment what's stored in, and how to find a solution for its problems, and where those problems are actually bilocated. So if you know about the ego, mind, thought, and chitta, buddhi, then you can have a sort of a map of the antakarna. Now you know both that it produces everything outward, like the teaching in Tibetan Buddhism yesterday we had, that one of the things you have to observe is that everything comes from the mind. Everything outward has come from the mind. So you have that advantage over others who may not know that. Plus, now you know where all of these compartments are located and what's lodged in them. Put that together with like dissolution of the mind process, and then this razor's edge becomes a little less sharp. You see, this path you're treading, which is so precarious, for success. I mean, you can make appreciable progress, but getting overall success with it in a day and age like this, Kali Yuga, in a society like this, with upbringing like this, and with your own karma is a pretty far cry for most of us. Making progress is sort of what Vivekananda has brought to us. He says, it may be that we can't get individual enlightenment, but we can get it collectively if we pull together. So this is again talking about Vyasti and Samasti, isn't it? Individual mind and collective mind. He doesn't mean you can solve all the problems of the collective mind. My God, nobody can do that. But don't even go there. But you do have that chance to work on your own mind and a sort of collective mind of your sangha, you see, or a collective mind of your family if you're a householder, with the Dharma. Those are important compartments of the. I saw someone shudder over there. Just the thought of it. Those are important compartments of the collective mind. That if it's like one rotten apple ruins the whole thing. Well, that's not fair. There should be one pure apple in there to be an example for the others that aren't yet rotten. So we have to look at it that way too. Every possibility we can possibly call up to help us. We need all our aids and our benefits and our blessings and so forth. Now let's look at sensuality in the chitta, in the ahankara, vanity and gross overestimation of oneself. Sensuality in the chitta and the thoughts are thoughts focused on sense enjoyment alone. So you want to take and reverse that and focus it on God alone, like our chant at the beginning of this class told us. Sensuality in the manas, that's in the dual mind, attachment to outer beauty, bereft of inner light. That's a good one. So, so sometimes manas is hard to understand for people, and you call it dual mind, and that even makes it harder for them to understand. It's just this variety based in two-ness, variegation and separation. And if you say duality at the highest level, then you see how there's Advaita, and then there's qualified Vishishta Advaita, they call it, and so forth, and there's these divisions you're observing. But if you're bringing that down lower into the base mind, then you see that a lot of these passions and fetters are being caused by the mind's inability to coalesce, to take Dharma and coalesce it, like dipping your mind in the Dharma. Somebody was telling me they were trying to read, but they had a toothache or a headache. I said, well then, pick up the book and read it and don't stop reading. Because as long as you read the book, you're not aware of your headache or your toothache. It goes away. So your mind is property to take itself off of pain, even physical pain it can do that with. So you get your mind, absorb your mind somewhere else. And she said, oh, that's a good idea, I'll try that. And I said, yes, but don't stop reading the book. Read it forever. Don't put it down, because then the pain will come back. It's a good metaphor for just keeping your mind fixed on higher things. Water the flowers, not the weeds. You never consider the weeds ever again. And in the case of karma, that negative karma that come back on you, that's burnt rope, burnt string. It looks like it can bind you, but it can't. One whiff of wind will blow it away. So if karmas haunt your mind again, you must say, oh, I already got rid of that. That's gone. That's just a thought that's recurring in my chitta, that it never quite got, will eventually disappear if I don't put any energy on it. It's just sort of therapeutic too with mental therapy and all that, certain rules. And it's also religious, where there is hatred, let me sow love and all that. I mean, so both religion and therapy, philosophy and psychology hold those kinds of teachings. And the application may be different. In this case, it's toward the Dharma always, until truth reveals itself. And other methods are used with other walks of life. But here, it's sadhana and dharma. That's the focus. You must hear the truth and you must practice it. So clarification, intensification around the truth itself by these teachings, and then your mind cutting its teeth on that, so that it pretty soon just gets the idea and returns to normal, original mind. Ordinary mind, original mind. Make that shift. We finished sensuality. So those are 5 of these gross knots. I have them on the side of the gross knots with the asuras, the negative forces. The gods are the subtle forces, and there are subtle knots there. And I have 2 quotes about 2 of them, but let's save those. First there is ignorance, egotism. Those are the first 2 kleshas of yoga. Avidya and first 2 of the 3. That is avidya and raga dvesha. So dvesha would be aversion. So you have this egotism, ignorance, and ahankara, or that kind of problem is there. And those form knots in the mind. So they're subtler knots. The gods are working with those more, whereas the asuras are working more with hatred, doubt, pride, and so forth. It's almost a division between people who are of a more refined nature and people who are still animalistic. Tantra makes that division too, pasu and virya. The gods will be more noble, they'll be more heroic, and the asuras will be more animalistic. They're still caught in passions and attachment and desires, baser kind. And they're always fighting with the gods in the scriptures. So they're all each trying to, the asuras are trying to gain their ground, and they're trying to keep them from gaining ground. So it's again this metaphor about dual mind always fighting with itself and trying to clear the ground, like in yoga, and the effective ways in which you can do that. Now, around rites and rituals, the Upanishad tells us pretty much near the beginning of that scripture that those who attend upon rites and rituals go to a deeper, darker hell than anyone else. That's pretty stark, because rites and rituals, we know if they're guided properly, are very elevated. Part of the bhakti yoga path is rites and rituals, but if they become conventional over centuries, over thousands of years, then they become totally ineffective, and they even become means of bondage, just like studying only in one mode all your lifetimes. You develop a samskara for that, and then you come back as the same type of being, and you come back as the same type of being, and you never spread out. And the samskara that develops then routes you along a certain mode of rebirth. So you can see how they're connected to rebirth in form and rebirth without form. Both of those are called barriers. Rebirth itself is not desirable, in other words, to this darshana. It wants you free of birth and death. And you can say, I have no birth, I have no death, and understand that conceptually, but then find yourself right back in the body in the next lifetime. You see, what happened, right? Like the hippo that called out to God, I said hippie. You find you probably thought he was a hippie in a previous lifetime, or prayed to God for it, but that didn't happen. So again, affirmation's not enough. You need intense spiritual practice followed up. That's what Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj told us. Affirmation is good, it's not enough. You need to follow it up with intense spiritual practice to clear the ground completely. And what are you clearing it of? Doubt, mainly, you see. And then pride and hatred and restlessness and all the rest follow. Now, about rites and rituals, there's this beautiful quote from the Ishavasya Upanishad right here. I'll read it for you. Those who are devoted to rituals only enter into blind darkness, and into deeper darkness go those fixed on knowledge of rituals alone. They who worship non-becoming and becoming apart from one another fail to see. They who perceive them together conquer death. So there is some justification for that blanket statement if you go to a deeper, darker hell of rituals and if you're attached to that kind of thing. But that's because you're separating them and seeing them each as different. But when you put them together, with your understanding, with your comprehension, and with the wisdom and so forth, then they can lead you up and out of darkness, and you can conquer death with them. So it's all a matter of the quality of your own consciousness. As I was saying earlier, you can save yourself that way. Rebirth with form and rebirth without form, I already pretty much commented on those at the beginning of the class, and one of them took it to task early. That's rebirth with form, because dragging from birth to death and death to birth of soul is how Vivekananda would have put that in his Song of the Sannyasin. But rebirth without form is sort of puzzling, so I had to search again in Patanjali and find this saying about Prakriti Layas. Prakriti Layas are certain kinds of souls that are very advanced, but they're still fashioning worlds of name and form and time and space on a very subtle level. So it keeps them from gaining Kaivalya. Father of Vedanta, I found him mentioning them, Vedavyas. Prakriti Layas, to understand the word Prakriti nature, Laya dissolution, right? So those who can dissolve Prakriti, forms of Prakriti and reform them, as these kinds of beings can do. And in a sense, we all do that, without knowing it, but these beings are doing it on purpose. They'll, at cloud castles in the sky, actually, Vedavyas says, that's a term that was first in Indian scriptures. They build cloud castles in the sky. And in another rendering, they say the gods get their garland, from their devotees that they've created and brought together, and then over time, when that world that they created is about to disintegrate and fall back into the mind that created it, the garlands go bad, flowers spoil, and the devotees all run away, and rats leave the sinking ship. See? So that happens to beings who create these worlds in space and time that are interior worlds, more toward the unmanifested Prakriti. In other words, we're not seeing the seeds of unmanifested Prakriti, so we can't manipulate them consciously, but these beings get into unmanifested Prakriti, see the seeds, and can use them for their own purposes. And that keeps them from getting Kaivalya, separation from nature, because unmanifested Prakriti is the beginning of nature, of all nature, in its seedless form, its formless form. So, of course, knowing that bit of knowledge, you're probably one of a few thousand people in the world that know that. And now cogitating on it and reflecting on it and accepting it beyond doubt and so forth, then will allow you to evade those kinds of allurements and false attainments when they come to you. And they may come to you, like Ramakrishna said to Vivekananda, the young Naran, I have all these powers that came to me from practicing yoga. Do you want them? And Swamiji said, well, will they help me in my spiritual path? And Ramakrishna said, no, and they might even hinder you. I don't want them, he said. So, wiser souls will be those who just, work themselves through the centers without getting caught. And less wiser souls would be possibly even gods, but especially demigods, I guess is a word we could borrow from Rome and Greece philosophy, that basically that they're asuras, or part divine and part part benign and part banal. They have this mixture of it inside them. And they gravitate more toward jealousy and pride. That's why these are put on this side, you see. But the more divine beings, they begin to refine themselves. So let me read that quote. Prakriti layas are souls who have risen above attraction for phenomena. That is, this outer phenomena. Who can dissolve the mental complex, yet who still desire to create worlds out of unmanifested Prakriti. As a result, they have not yet attained Kaivalya. Vedavyas, father of Vedanta, we call him. So, these are endearing terms. Patanjali is the father of yoga, but there were many, many fathers of yoga before him, maybe the same soul even, but we dawn that upon him because in this present time he's known for that 8-limb system and so forth. Same with Vedavyas. He came along when all these Upanishads were about to be lost. And some of them already had been lost, and probably living some 300 or 400 years after Patanjali, and gathered them together so that we would have them, and so that Shankara could comment on them, and so forth and so on. So we call them affectionately the father of yoga and the father of Vedanta. But of course it's a long line of seers that ultimately is probably the same being, but relatively are taking births like we are. And they're not Prakriti layas. They reached Kaivalya, and then they came back. But these souls are very powerful, but they may take stations as gods or so forth. But if they take a human birth, they would be great discoverers and great powerful beings who are conquerors and warmongers. Yeah, I mean everything is there for them because they have control over that unmanifested Prakriti. Well, that pretty much concludes a quick view of that chart. I don't really need to have to read this. All of you have memorized it. Where seekest thou? That freedom, friend, neither this nor that can give. In books and temples vain thy search. Thine only is the hand that holds the rope that drags thee on. So cease lament. Let go thy hold, sannyasin bold. Say, Om Tat Sat Om. Yeah. So it was a perfect selection to put with this. Let go thy hold of those things, and then don't seek any more outwardly in the realms of Prakriti, but go to the Atman, that is the repository of all wisdom. First law of knowledge, all knowledge is within you. First law of yoga. See? Let's move on, so we make a little advancement to Sloka 15. Just as an uprooted reed floats away on the water, never still for a moment, so does Maya ceaselessly affect even a wise man if he averts his face from the truth. What is the truth? Well, and how it sets you free, then we can take another gander at the 5 essential and eternal facts. We don't need to spend time. We've seen this before, but some of us may be new to. These 5 essential facts are very good to meditate upon. The opening quote is, in the process of neutralizing karmas and samskaras, the recognition of the distinction between soul, mind, and matter, between the soul-mind conglomerate and matter, occurs, cited as the difference between Purusha and Prakriti in Samkhya Yoga. This key insight is not meant to be left in the atmosphere of duality, but rather to be taught in the light of Advaitic practice and realization. You don't want to leave these with a dual mind. You want to clarify, intensify, and bring together, integrate, and then bring it into a higher level and contemplate it. This knowledge holds true throughout, but an unclear mind or a dualistic mind isn't going to get the same insight out of these pieces of knowledge that a soul that's already understood non-duality and is dwelling at that level, or even at a qualified non-dual level. That's a very high level to dwell at. So these kinds of things are going to be very much of an impediment back there. You see, and these are gross and subtle knots. I mean, even like Kamalakanta sings about them sometimes. Shukir Vashana Karo Arkadin. Shukir Vashana Karo Arkadin. Taji Anyobo Kali Kali Bo Anobo Janamo Jadin Botui Taji Anyobo Kali Kali Bo Anobo Janamo Jadin Shukir Vashana Karo Arkadin. Shukir Vashana Karo Arkadin. Kamala Kanta Haye Branta Bule Shona Shanadin. Kamala Kanta Haye Branta Bule Shona Shanadin. Bare bare ashi dukha rashi rashi. Bare bare ashi dukha rashi rashi. Jatane shabe arkadin. Shukir vashana karo arkadin. Shukir vashana karo arkadin. So he goes on, rolling on, verse after verse like that, in this beautiful song, which is a combination of major and minor chords. Sometimes to take you back and forth melodically through these changes, these moods of music. But he says, how long will you cling to your empty desire for earthly happiness? Give up these vain thoughts and idle talk. For as many days that are left to you, chant Kali, Kali. And then the last verse I sang is, bewildered by Maya, Kamalakanta has forgotten the 9 months and 9 days of suffering in his mother's womb. Misery and pain are the outcome of limited existence. How many more lives of ignorance can I bear? See? So he's a soul that's beginning to reach to the end of the asuric part, the animalistic part of his mind. And he's leaning towards sattva. And when he does that, then the things he is going to have to contemplate are taking birth in form, or even in formlessness. He's going to have to also wonder if he's going to go back to seed form, or if he's going to go back to his essence. Be a good way of putting it. If you go back to the ultimate seed, it's Om eternal, right? And then there's no problem, you see. That's with God as well as was with God. It also is God. But it has a beginning and an end in it, you see. In the beginning was the Word, so that's origins. And you want to move through it. The third eye chakra inwards to the crown chakra would be, and the Word was with God, the Word was God, see. So if you can affect that in your meditation consciousness, the elevation or involution or inwardness, inward ascension I used to call it, of your consciousness with a capital C, and identify it with consciousness of the uppercase C, then you can affect that major transformation and go beyond all transformations. And then you won't have to be singing a song like that. How many more lives of ignorance can I bear? And why do you cling to this empty desire for happiness, you see? So that being said, somebody who did reach a higher state of consciousness would become aware of these 5 facts. And that is a very good thing. See here. Number 1, the soul we call Atman is different from and ever free of nature. Knowing that alone is going to be very liberating for your mind, for your fourfold mind. The intellect, the chitta, the ego, and its thoughts. All of that's going to be liberated. In fact, Milarepa sings, all errant thoughts are liberated in the Dharmakaya. Remember the teaching yesterday? You two weren't here for it, but the 3 bodies of the Buddha, second body is that richness, the body of teachings. Dharmakaya. It's called a little differently sometimes in different Tibetan lineages, but and Buddhistic lineages too. But basically the Dharmakaya is this ocean of teachings I was telling you about at the beginning of class, in which you're plunging your mind into with me for the last 25 years, and maybe even before that, before you met me. So we take that very seriously, and well, Ramakrishna puts it nice. So does Kabir. Kabir says, dive deep, O mind, dive deep into the ocean of God's beauty. If you descend to the uttermost depths, there you will find the gem of love. Go seek, O mind, go seek Vrindavan in your heart, where with his loving devotees Sri Krishna sports eternally. Light up, O mind, light up wisdom's shining lamp, and let it burn unceasingly within your heart. Who is it that guides the boat of your body across this solid earth? It is your Guru, says Kabir. Meditate on his holy feet. So Sri Ramakrishna is the Guru, his holy feet we're meditating on, and he says it in many different ways. One particular one comes to mind, though, about the radiant light of the new day raises waves of joy. In it the yogis and yoginis sport eternally. It's talking about that, this dawn of wisdom. The lotus of the new day spreads out upon this world, he says. And then there the mother stands unveiled inside the lotus. It goes on and on like that with its beautiful explanations of this process of awakening. So the soul Atman is different from and ever free of nature. 2, all of nature has come out of the soul, and as it does, no change takes place in the soul. Somebody sent me yesterday a seminar that they're conducting, a kind of retreat that the scientists all gathered at. Deepak Chopra went, of course, and so when I was reading it through again, it was very evident to me that they very much believe in transformation, in evolution. And so, but this says opposite. All of nature has come out of the soul, and as it does, no change takes place in the soul. So if we see the worlds come out of, the mind, intelligent complex come out of the Atman like waves rising off an ocean, and then the senses and body and all egos and all that coming out of that and producing worlds in name and form and time and space, then we have to look at it all and say, that's non-actual. That's just apparent. Nothing is happening. And you only know that from law number 1, the eternal fact that the Atman is different from and ever free of nature. It's independent. Purusha is separate from Prakriti. Hand me the oil and water again. I'm just kidding. Yeah, so, don't shake it. Don't shake your booty. Leave it placid and clean. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, stick a stick in a mud puddle and it'll take days for the sediment, to settle down. The mind is like that. It's full of sediment. But the wise ones don't stick the stick in there of mental projection and so forth and stir it and wait for lifetimes for it to settle down. They just observe the mind. And, of course, they're aware of the observer. They're neither clear water nor sediment. They're the observer of the two. So that transformation that's going on back and forth is what you observe if you know these first 2 laws. Nothing in any way, since Brahman is transformationless, aparinama is the Sanskrit word, nothing in any way can change the essence and perfection of your soul. Become very clear about that and meditate on it. That's non-duality at its best, really. It starts to get more qualified non-duality as you come down to help explain things. Like number 3, as nature emerges from the soul, it does so as mental projection rather than as actual creation. You can't get something out of nothing, so creation's a misnomer. You can't create something out of nothing. It came from somewhere. You can't just magically produce something. See, it has to have a seed, has to have a cause to its effect. Otherwise, science is not only unfair, it's dishonest. Cause and effect. You can't just have an effect with no cause. What are you talking about? You see, transcending both cause and effect, that's entirely different, but who knows that? You see, There's no knower there. There's just the pure experience of pure conscious awareness. But when you talk about effect, you have to talk about a cause. And the two are embedded in one another. And they're often revolving in one another all the time. That's this problem. So at this level it would be non-transformation to transformation. But then there would be a non-transformation with a capital N, aparinama, a-create, as we were saying in the first half. And those are things to ponder, and when you ponder them, you decide that they're true. You don't have doubt about them, right? You don't go back and have doubt about them and your mind gets confused and you wonder and you can't decide. You ponder them, make a decision, make them a part of your own store of knowledge and wisdom and dwell in them. And then see how quick darkness goes away. See any darkness that has left over in you, how that doesn't linger anymore. And you become a seer. Your eye is single and you know the truth. For the soul Atman has an eternal relationship with nature. It is, if it identifies with nature, there is only suffering. But if it only associates with nature, it sports freely. So there's a qualified non-dual teaching right there. You can see here this diagram with Lord Shiva dancing his Tandava dance. See, the worlds are here at his feet. Negativities are there in the asura, the demon, the ego. And then you take refuge in his feet. And then grace comes. And from grace you realize love. And love and wisdom are the crowning. Wisdom is the crowning. Non-dual wisdom is the crowning effect of that whole process. So you step up like that. Inward it means inward ascension. So associate with nature, fine. I have a relationship, fine. Oil and water, one rests on top of the other. You see, but when you start to mix it, then that's going to be mayic in nature, because you're taking something that's not possible and making it possible. That's really a good definition for Maya. If that has happened to you, then you need Durga. See, Durga means difficult. She who is difficult to know is Durga, because she makes things that are impossible to happen. Things contrastic opposites. She'll merge them and split them with each other. See, she won't let either one exist. She'll bring them together and destroy them both. So she's the perfect mother for non-duality. And she's known for spiritual transformation. That's her main mother aspect. She vibrates right there. Kali is rather more transcendent. Cremation grounds, poof, that's it. You see, but Durga provides over spiritual transformation. Fifth, nature has manifested and unmanifested sides, by which knowing the soul can remain free of cycles of birth and death and ignorance. One of the great missing elements Swami Vivekananda brought to us, basically prana, tanmatra, and unmanifested prakriti. Those three are missing in that 24 cosmic ladder, you see. Those are missing in our thinking. What else is missing in our thinking? That all of these are connected. We see earth, air, fire, water, and ether as 5 different things, and they don't connect to the senses, not by way of origins, not by the way of involution. We're just not there. So if you begin to discover that they are there, and you have some sort of inkling that this is a trail to be followed, then you'll only get so far as prana, and if it's not there, where you go, you see, fall back to the senses. The intellect falls into doubt. See, it doesn't have any clear way to move. So if prana is there, then you can go to psychic prana, and from psychic prana you can move into mind, intellect, ego, and so forth. And from there, the origins you're looking for is unmanifested prakriti. Where are the seeds to all of this? Where are the seeds to my thoughts? Where is the original thought? Where is the realm of pure thought? Chittakasha, Jnanakasha, Vijnanakasha, Chiddakasha. Where is the word? Where is the original seed? And this is a way in which if you're meditating in Gethsemane or in your own home shrine, you can find your way inward. And you can do it in a thrice if you have all of the pieces in mind. It's like putting together a puzzle at first. Salutations to Baba Trinima, looking on right now down in San Francisco, our great healer and eldest member, mother of our Sangha. She puts together these puzzles lately with her sons and so forth, the huge puzzles, and then frames them, puts them on the wall when they're done. So it's like that. It's putting together a puzzle, knowing that you have to do that, and looking for the pieces and the shades and the colors and the tones and the shape. It's all about the word, because inside of your mind it's it's often separated, like we're saying. Tone, color, shape, sound, word, meaning, object, they're all there, but they haven't been brought together and coalesced yet into a solid principle. So you have to do that if your puzzle has become, if the picture in your mind has been cut up and strewn in pieces all over, you see, gather the pieces and then start to put them together, and then the whole thing will make great sense to you, and you'll have one complete picture of reality in your mind. That's called non-duality. From there you can be free and go where you want, do what you wish, as Ramakrishna told Naren. Keep this in your brain cloth, this picture of non-duality, and then go anywhere and do what you want. You could even go to America, you see it, frequent with the Malechas, with the Howleys, with the materialists, see, with the warmongers, and also the unselfish and beautiful people that are mixed up with them. So this is all an admixture. You see, nature is manifested and unmanifested sides. So the final quote here, when the mind recognizes the stark distinction between consciousness and matter, between sentiency and insentiency, it then perceives that all of nature, name, form, time, space, and causality, is its own self-projected maya, and it enters into what Patanjali calls koivalya. That's isolation from nature is the best English definition for koivalya. And in yoga it happens just before sampragata samadhi. It's the last thing. That's the penultimate station. The soul will finally see that it's not nature. Not nature means not unmanifested prakriti, not the cosmic mind, not the collective mind, not the individual mind, not the buddhi, not the chitta, the thoughts, not the dual mind, then not the five senses in dream, not the five elements in dream, not the subtle and gross senses in waking state, not the gross senses of earth, air, fire, water, and ether. That whole ladder will know that it's not that, which is the whole purpose of neti neti. You had to do it from the ground up, see, in order to realize that that's where you came from, that was your source. And that's gotten so clouded over, it's so ancient. But now they've assigned a date to Samkhya, which is nice to see, some 4,000 years prior to Christ, 4100 BC, 41,000 BC, or 4100 BC. So if we say that, we've been saying that these scriptures go back 4,000 to 5,000 years before Christ. Some say that's a conservative estimate and they go back 10,000. But now we have a sort of date to revolve around where the system of fives and the 24 cosmic principles, 25 if you add God's mind, Mahat, into it, has been incepted by a great rishi. And further on in the Taittiriya Upanishad, which I quoted from Friday night at the book event, that they said these fives need to be connected, he says, that rishi, if they become disconnected. So I've often told you that knowledge consists of removing ignorance, yes, but real dynamic is that it assesses and assigns. See, it takes account of these things. Just by taking account of them, you'll remember them, is what I say. See? If you meditate, If you don't try this coalescence, this process, and you leave it all, It's like leaving A, U, and M unconnected, waking, dreaming, and sleep, deep sleep unconnected. Your gross body, your subtle body, and your causal body unconnected. You see, the three worlds unconnected. Then you float. That's what Pipalada says in his Upanishad. You just float. The soul floats in separation. It never knows its nature, and it revolves in the wheel of birth and death. So take account of it, know it, make it a part of your wisdom store, and do some little contemplation on it, some cogitation, some rumination, and finally some meditation. And these five will be a guide for you. Because these, when you're doing that process, you can lose track of these. So like getting involved in Dharma could make you forget non-dual truth. All of a sudden you think the Dharma is the ultimate thing. See, even the wise fall from the path if they don't keep that non-dual Brahman in first and foremost in their mind. Because why? Because these teachings are qualified non-dualistic teachings. So you might come to think that that's all in all. Like a mathematician might come to think that math is all in all. Or some other lawyer thinks this law is all in all, and so forth. Just like that, a spiritual teacher or spiritual seeker may come to think that Dharma is all in all. But beyond Dharma is Swadharma, your essential nature. And before Dharma is Adharma, unrighteousness. See? So this is keeping all this in mind anyway. These five facts, from the most non-dual down to the most precious qualified non-dual, are a very good way of taking account, see, for yourself, putting this into practice. The Purusha, the soul, is mentioned in there quite a bit, and I know Hastamalaka also sings about that in his own inimitable way too. He sings, in his Hasta Amalaka Stotram, he sings, Ya eko vibhati swatha shuddha chetaha prakasha swaropopi naneva desho sharabodakasto yatha bhanu arekaha Sanichopalabdhi swaropohamatma. He sings, absolutely unique, the ineffable essence which is the source and origin of all, the primal Purusha, playfully manifesting itself in pure mind, one who is the impartial sun, reflecting in the different water pots of various intellects. That one and I are identical, non-different, inseparable. Whether you put it in Sanskrit or in English, it's pretty much conveys the same lofty truth to you. See? And you have this memorized, right? So, mostly. It comes and goes, it sticks and leaves. So, just as an uprooted reed floats away in the water, never still for a moment, so does Maya ceaselessly affect even a wise man if he averts his face from the truth. So these are five truths to keep in mind that are very well proportioned and very well stocked, very well explained in philosophical plus poetic terms to help you keep your mind fixed on that one feet of Brahman, if you say. Brahmapada. Keep your mind fixed on the 4 feet of Brahman, like the 4 Vedas. To be written down in your own note, just 5 little sentences. We still have time to go on towards another sloka. Whoever so realizes the absolute while alive continues to be absolute after death. Rooted in concentration, the sinless one, O sinless one, remains steadfast. And so the birth and death process gets transcended in that great mind. It says, you're of course always that. Everyone is always birthless and deathless consciousness. But if, and this is Sloka 16 for you, all those of you who are following the text, if you don't realize the absolute while you're alive, then you'll fall into the illusion of birth and death. That's probably the best way of putting it. Our founder, Lex Hickson, said that. You get in, the illusion of birth and death insinuates itself upon the mind, the transmigrating soul. And the Purusha gets confused, the intellect gets colored, and the thoughts get dual and fragmented, and the ego gets prideful, and mind gets dual. And then it's as if you are living and dying. You let birth and death become real to you, and you make them real. Sri Ramakrishna said very beautifully in the Gospel, that M recorded, Mahendranath Gupta recorded it. He said that living many, many lives without realization of the Atman, you begin to think that the world is real. It's very nicely put. Many lives of worldliness, lived over and over again, causes you to think that the world is real. So, I mean, in the Vedanta we come forward and say the world's unreal, it's illusory, mithya jagad, Brahman satya jagad mithya, Brahman's real, the world isn't. Mithya means false. So we say that to people and they're surprised and shocked. See, that should be common knowledge. Call it unreal, call it a dream, call it transitory, changing, ephemeral, it all pretty much amounts to the same thing. Call it shifting sand, like Jesus did. But give it up, see, and then live in the eternal reality that's left over from that renunciation. See, there's something left over from renunciation. Call it a concentrated residue. That's basically you, or your higher wisdom, your 5 facts, as it were. But otherwise, he says, whoever so realizes the absolute while alive continues to be absolute after death. So you need a jivan mukta realization, a living, liberated soul. If we mix in our Tibetan with that, you have a conscious death. Fill your mind with the Dharma, die consciously without panic, even-mindedly, give up the body. However way you do that, through, I was talking to a man last week, I want to kill myself. See? So I said, well, what's the method? Because I'm into method. I'm a teacher. Right? I want to get you a certain place, I'll give you a method. So disarm. I was not disarmed at all. I just didn't even change my expression. I want to kill myself. What's the method? And then he didn't say anything, so I said again, what's the method? And he said, yeah, right. Yeah, right, it's a mantra. So people, then I told him, you're not alone, we all want to kill ourselves. See, we're rushing toward death every second. The body is always dead. The body never lived. It lives by prana. See, and prana lives by something else, and that lives by something else. So join the seers. They don't want to be here either. Maybe you're a realized soul. But if you don't tie together the loose ends with the time you have left, you might cry out, not hippo at the end of your life. You say, not a hippo, I said hippie. You might find out that you've come back in the same condition that you left in. And that's not going to be any fun, because time is this eternal cycle. So, well, maybe I'll get better parents and better circumstances and all that. But not likely. If you haven't cleared your karma with old parents and cleared your karma with things. So it's suicide is no solution, of course. But there are ways of dealing with that are much more advanced. Like I went on saying, just spend your time reading, doing some noble things for others. The best thing, the way to get out of depression and boredom is to help others. Karma yoga style way of getting out. So that was my point. Sometimes, you use karma yoga to get out. Sometimes you use prayer. Sometimes you use whatever it takes at the end of your life, but try a conscious exit. what's the harm? Where are you going? Everyone passes, and everyone has passed. It's just that on record there's thousands of souls who passed consciously and came back consciously, so nothing ventured, nothing gained. You're giving it all up anyway, aren't you? So why not do it nobly? That's kind of what I was saying to him. And if you do pass away, then do it nobly. Don't panic and don't cry out and don't be depressed. Just say, Mother, here's my body back. See? Take it and give me pure love for thee. Give me pure love, pure knowledge, and pure devotion, as the great prayer in our tradition goes. What do I have to say about this in the remaining 10 minutes? How the Shariran informs the Sharira. And don't try and say that if you're Elmer Fudd. I'm going to teach you now how the Shariran informs the Shariran. No, it's not going to be very clear. And we want clarity before we intensify. You don't want to go to the great rishis and say, what's the Sawewa? So, in conjunction with whoever realized the Absolute while alive, continues to be Absolute even after death, rooted in concentration, O sinless one, notice the title they have for you, not a sinner, but a sinless one, remain steadfast, equanimous, of equal mind, with the same eye looking upon everything. He says, Swami Vivekananda used to say, I don't believe in humility, I believe in samadarshitvam, equal vision to everyone and everything. See? So neither pride nor humility nor false pride. Going beyond all that, you just see the same in all, and you as that. And you move around people like that, and through circumstances and situations like that. So, how the Shariran informs the Sharira is a quick study here. Or the illumination of the jiva. Now you all probably know what the jiva is. For anyone looking on and live streaming, the jiva is the embodied soul. He's got the idea that he's an individual. And he came into the body like that. He's the jiva koti. He's a conglomerate of mind, ego, senses, body. And he thinks that's him. So he's not a jivan mukta yet, knowing that that's just his covering, his sheath. But so the Sharira, how it informs the Sharira and how the soul informs the body-mind mechanism is what Vishishta is talking about here. How does it? The Sharira, the body-mind mechanism, creates mental vibrations via sankalpa. Via this projection power and its vibration creates these worlds of name and form and time and space. But the Shariran, the spirit in the body, cognizes Atmic reality as non-fluctuation of mind. So it doesn't let that process. Pramadana nasandeha kim karashami vrittiman. What does the yogi do with this mind? Everyone else has a mind that projects. What does the yogi do with his mind and his projections? He lets them rise naturally. Then he dissolves them back into the ocean of consciousness like bubbles. That's out of the non-dual scriptures, Ashtavakra Samhita or Avadhuta Gita. So those are talking about the minds, how people's thoughts rise and then they project them and get their desires fulfilled or not, frustrated. But the yogi just lets them fall and watches them and dissolves them back in. So like your meditation practice at 5 a.m. and 10 p.m. So you get up and go to bed. You dissolve everything that happened to you in the waking state at 10 p.m. And at 5 p.m. you dissolve everything that happened to you in your dream state. See? And you just keep the slate wiped clean. You practice that every day. See, it may not have automatic results, but at the end of your life you'll have an even mind. Mm-hmm. See, you'll be used to that. Okay, I'm dying. Mm-hmm. See, so-called. Or maybe you'll have deeper insights from that even mind that come to you. The Sharira obscures connection between Jiva and Atman, between the embodied soul and the spirit. But the Shariran affirms Jiva's complete identity with Atman. All of that is Brahman. You're just not seeing it right. Right on down to every atom of your body. It's all Atman. See? But you're not seeing it right. The Sharira tends ever towards disease, decay, and death. Oops. That doesn't sound very good of my Sharira. The Shariran occupies the indestructibility of the Atman. Acknowledges the indestructibility of the Atman. So it's always affirming that connection. The Sharira gets attached to action in order to secure fruits. The Shariran reveals the way of detachment to both works and fruits. The Shariran covets everything for its own personal pleasure. The Sharira offers all actions and all thoughts to Brahman. So it's like a good mix of non-duality and karma yoga here. A lot of these show how those integrate. The Shariran covers everything for its own personal pleasure. I said that. The Shariran shuns loving God and seeks personal lordship. The Sharira worships Ishvara and becomes friend of the jivas. So that's in the bhakti sense, right? God with form. The Sharira clings to limits, fosters habits, is short-sighted. The Shariran seeks liberation, karmic neutrality, and equal vision. The Sharira, and I'm about to break my tongue trying to pronounce this word, avoids self-effort and thrives on excesses. The Shariran masters austerity and strives for renunciation. The Sharira settles itself into worldliness and convention. The Shariran gets established in yoga and attains jnana. Bullet points. The destruction of sankalpas in the mind is called asanga, non-attachment. Now, we're all in sangha right now. We're helping each other. But the wise soul gets realization, doesn't want anything to do with you anymore. With any group comes asanga and wonders, like a sannyasin. Goes away and dissolves body and mind and everything into the formless Brahman. Have no hope for me forevermore. I'm gone and gone forever. Yeah. So that's asanga. Non-attachment to everything. The comprehension of the jiva's complete identity with Brahman is called Atmagyan. You can tell this is a teaching of Lord Vasishtha, because Atmagyan was to him the ultimate knowledge of your true self. Third bullet point, knowledge of the birthless, deathless nature of the Atman is called Ajativada. So I told you aparinama, one great pillar, no transformation is possible. There's no such thing as change. It's all apparent, it's all maya. It's all foisted on you. So aparinama means non-transformation, that's Brahman. That's you, that's Atman. No transformation takes place actually, it just seems to. And that's because of your projecting power, right? Your desires and projecting power. And then ajativada on this particular bullet point. Jati means birth, ajati, no birth, vada, path. So these are the paths of the one who follow the way of no birth, no death. They'll even come into the body and say, I was never born. Seems kind of contradictory, but how can anything get born in Maya? And if it doesn't get born in Maya, how can it die in Maya? So this is only done by the delusion of your own mind. The renunciation of the fruits of action is called sannyas. These are key words in Vasishtha's philosophy. Asanga, Atmagyan, Jativada, and sannyas. Very powerful words. If you just knew what they meant, you could just take the words and contemplate them, open them up inside of you. The wisdom particles, split the wisdom atom, see it, release the true understanding that dwells there. Now, he says, knowledge springing from proper discrimination that results in the identity of the universe with the I, the identity of the universe and the I with Brahman is called Brahmarpana, Brahmahavir. So it's the offering of everything into Brahman. Giving up duality and knowing that there is one Ishvara is called Ishvararpana. Ishvararpana. So there's Brahmarpana, but then there's Ishvararpana too. So that would be knowing the first cosmic principle, or the cosmic mind, or the chosen ideal, the highest concept of God that the human mind can think of. First thing it will pass through when it begins to take on its sankalpic process. If you've been devoted to it, you'll pass through it and it'll wink at you. See, remember what Holy Mother said? Telling that story about Divine Mother. She says, go down and play in my worlds of name and form. And she, a really good wink, you see, means don't get lost there. Remember where you come from. Those are all sankalpa, you see. But if you the soul passes through Isvara and doesn't salute it, as it were, it doesn't acknowledge it, just falls into the worlds, you see, then there's no connection back. So why you practice mantra here and selecting a chosen ideal here is you're enforcing that relationship with the son of the father or the daughter of the mother. And doing so, then you have this prime connection with them all through life. So shall we back up here a bit, all through life, right? Practice of spiritual disciplines ending in mature renunciation is called para-vairagyam. So there's vairagyam, but there's also para-vairagyam. And vairagyam, detachment is in 10 levels. And two of them are meek, and 3 of them are middling, and the others are strong. So you get up the ladder of vairagyam. Like meek and mild would be man loses his wife and he marries a year later. He hasn't learned a lesson yet. So he goes and gets married again, right? So he didn't realize that all things pass. See, and he knew that for about 6 months and then got enamored of Maya again. So that's meek renunciation to them, you see. It's just like the man who says, I'm going to Benares to renounce my family. See, and his family goes, great, he's going to be a great soul in our family. See, we'll be saved, all of us will be saved. It's not going to make us money, that's too bad, but at least he'll get us saved later. See. So he goes to Benares and he's walking around, see, and then the family gets a telegram a week later, I got a great job here in Benares. You go to Benares to get liberated, Varanasi, Kanchi, you go there to get liberated, and he went there to get liberated and get free, and he just ends up getting a job. That's mild, very mild renunciation, temporary. The last 3 here, last two. Penultimately, we have the attainment of spiritual emancipation is called moksha. And finally, the effort to attain the non-dual state is called jnana and yoga. You put together this wisdom teachings with your practice. Can't be a better combination than that. Lord Vasishtha says about all this, the indwelling spirit informs the body of the immortal nature of the spirit. So hopefully the body, senses, and all will open up and listen and get this information that it so needs and requires for a divine life. So here, let's, after taking sloka 16 and 15 prior to that and 14 before that, we will end with a chant and come back in the summer for 2 more classes on this Upanishad. So you may look into the following slokas and review the last ones, and you'll be all ready for the classes. Om Bhadram Karnebhihi Shreenuyama Devaha Bhadram Pasyema Akshabir Jatraha Stirair ongaish tushtuvam sastanavir, Vyashema devahitam yadayahu, Swasti na indra vrida shrabaha, Swasti na pusha vishvadevaha, Swasti nastarksho arishthanemihi, Swasti no brihaspatir dadatu, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we hear with these ears what is good and spiritual. May we see with these eyes what is noble and uplifting. And may we, while worshipping the Lord and Mother of the universe with healthy minds and bodies, live a life which is beneficial to ourselves and to all other beings. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om